right. Six Pack Dad Tribe. We're here for another podcast. And our guest tonight is Doug Stoddard, who is a habit breaker expert. And he's going to talk to us about breaking habits, what creates some of the habits and some of the pitfalls that we fall into to find ourselves in situations like being overweight sometimes and unhealthy, and how that ties in the cyclical process of breaking those habits and making ourselves healthy and productive. So Doug, why don't you introduce yourself, take it away, talk about whatever you want, share your screen when you feel necessary, and we will, I'll throw some questions at you as they pop into my head.
Hey, thank you, Jeffrey, and I'm grateful to Tyson for inviting me to do this. I'm also grateful to Greg Johnson because he's one of my clients and we have a lot of great conversations.
I bet. Greg is a great guy.
Yeah, he really is. But I'm from Idaho. Have 6 kids. They're all girls except for 5 boys. So if anybody needs advice on girls, I'm your guy. Okay. Yeah, but a little bit about my story is I've always been this guy that I felt like I could start at the bottom of something, like in sales, and be given the worst territory in the world, and just over time be able to build it up to what I thought was really successful. And so I had that mindset, and we had our own business, and we were connected very heavily in with another company, and the ownership of that company was caught embezzling, and the lawsuits against them took them down. And because we were so closely connected, it ended up taking us down as well. And we ended up in bankruptcy. And at the same time, we had 2, remember, I have a great dad, 6 kids, at the same time, we had 2 of these children who didn't want anything to do with us for 9 years. And I get a little emotional about this because
Sure.
I don't think anything that hurts any worse than to lose a relationship of a child. And I could take all this other stuff, but that was tough, and we didn't know why. And so here I was the guy who's doing a lot of training in our business, everybody, a lot of respect, and here I was. Now I was bankrupt. I didn't want anybody to know about it.
Sure.
I have all this self-dialogue going on about what's wrong with me, because we tried to recreate it and just really struggled. And so I was trying to walk around looking like I was still the 10, the guy up front, confident, positive, but inside I felt like a 2. I had all this dialogue going on, all this emotional triggering going on, wondering what's wrong with me, all this kind of stuff. And I didn't know what to do with it. To be honest with you, I'd read all the books, I'd done programs. It just didn't seem to take me to the next level. And especially, I don't know about people that are listening to this, but sometimes we can be really successful on the outside, in the outside world, the corporate world. And everybody thinks we got it all together. And inside, we know different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's painful.
Very much so. And I'll throw in real quick here. One of the things that we find with our guys is men struggle with self-image issues the same way as women do, and they don't like to express it. So on the outside, there's a lot of machismo and sometimes outward-facing confidence. But a lot of guys end up in our programs because they don't like the way they look. They don't like the way they look in pictures, family photos, those kind of things, but they don't talk about it. And so that really resonates with me because I was in the very same space 12 years ago when I started my weight loss journey. I actually, the only time I ever looked in the mirror was to shave because I didn't like the way I looked. So I can resonate with that, pretending to be a 10 but feeling like a 2. That's an excellent analogy.
Yeah. No, that's no fun. There's so much conflict involved with that. So you understand the journey that I was
Yes.
on. And it doesn't have to be about money. It can be about being a parent. It
Yes.
can be about relationships. It can be about all kinds of things, because I believe our marketplace is any place where we give value and expect value back in return, And so we have all kinds of marketplaces. So here I was for 9 years trying to figure it out, angry with my kids angry with myself. And I started, I began to realize something, that I didn't have the answers.
Oh, yeah.
And just what you explained, Jeffrey, I'm supposed to have the answers. And I didn't. And so it's interesting. I think God really helped me with this, because he connected me in with a guy, and we'd talk every week, kind of like a mini mastermind. And we were both trying to build another business. And one day he says to me, hey, I've got some information here about, in essence, about habits of thinking and how they work. And it's really helping me to connect with people. I'm finding more joy and fulfillment in my life. And boy, Doug, you just really need to look at this. And he said, nice, you're happy, but no, thanks. That went on for 6 months. Every week we had talked, he was happier, his business was growing, more fulfilled, he had a lot more energy. And each week I felt more miserable and more angry. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Because Jeffrey, right, everything we want is going to be right behind what I call our habits of thinking that are stored in our neural pathways. Everything that your people are looking for, that's where it's stored. And yet we tend to think of it as a negative, as a problem, or I'm the problem. And anyway, after 6 months, I peeked around the corner. I actually looked around the corner of my habits of thinking. And wow, I should have listened 6 months ago.
Right.
And this is what I discovered with this. 90% of all business problems, Jeffrey, are simply people's personal problems in disguise. And what drives those personal problems are our subconscious habits of thinking. Most of them, we're not even aware of them. So if we try to change our behaviors, or change behaviors within the workplace, the marketplace, by focusing on behavior and attitude, or excuse me, try to change the outcomes by focusing on, you got to change your attitude, buddy. I've told that to my kids before. Or you need to change your behavior. This is unacceptable. It's like herding cats.
Yes.
It doesn't work, because you're dealing with emotion, and those are always going up and down. So what I discovered and a tool that I have that I use with people is really helpful. But I want to lay a little bit of groundwork here, if I could.
Sure.
I'm an Idaho boy, and when I was 10 years old, I was delivering newspapers. Big dog came out, bit me, really severe infection, lots of shots.
Jeez.
Very traumatized. Next time I saw another big dog, what are you supposed to do? Run.
Yeah.
I think everybody has a dog story.
Yeah.
You run. 3 months after that, 10-year-old bully started pounding on me when I delivered paper to him. I went on day after day after day. To my subconscious, he looks like the big dog. So what do? You run. Who did I run to? I ran to my mom and said, Bob, you take care of the bully. That didn't work. It got worse. I should have just poked the guy right in the mouth and would have all stopped. But I created this trauma response. And the brain picks that up, and it begins to create a neural pathway in your brain. And science can measure these. It's just a little groove. And so that's what happened to me, to the point where by the time I graduated from high school, if anything got hard, I just quit. I just leave. My parents are going, oh, what are you?
Yeah.
But that was my trauma response. That was my habit of thinking stored in there. So we have many of those. So I want to share with you what comes with it. Now, this is Stoddard Neuroscience 101. Real basic. I love neuroscience. I've been doing this for almost 11 years. I just love it. And so this is what you get with one of those neural pathways, Jeffrey. You get a little gate in front of it, the little groove, okay? And on there is a trigger, and the trigger is your dog story, whatever your dog story is. And we have many of those, okay? And when life shows up, something happens that even looks familiar to the dog story to keep you safe and to keep you predictable. Your brain finds the dog story in all those grooves, pushes the button, It opens it up, and what you get is the brain starts dumping chemicals into this little groove. Immediately you feel the emotions, the fear, anxiety, stress, worry, frustration, overwhelm, underwhelm, resentment. All those things begin to happen. If you leave the gate open for over 90 seconds, it turns into thoughts. Like for me, bankruptcy is, what's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I figure this out? Why can't I recreate what I had before? It also creates what I call this distortion, which means instead of seeing ourselves as who we really are, we're really not as bad as our thoughts tell us. Okay? We get distorted in our identities.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a failure. I'm not a good dad. I'm not a good boss, or I'm a slob. I can't relate. I have no energy. These are all false identities. Okay. Then it also distorts situations. We can turn a molehill into a mountain, a problem. Okay. It gives us also a magnet. You start letting this habit of thinking going on and worry starts happening. Pretty soon you got 10 things to worry about. And most of them, you don't need to worry about them.
Right.
That's just how this works. That make sense to you, Jeffrey?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk all the time in the program about how simple this is. That we're not reinventing the wheel. A lot of it is common sense and making good, better, or best choices in situations. Sometimes the only choice you can make is just a good one. Sometimes there's a best one, depending on what the circumstances are or the stimulus around you. And I try to keep it very simple for my clients so that they don't overwhelm themselves with things that could be triggers, anxiety because they're at a buffet at a work, event, and they don't know how to choose good food choices. So they panic and they just choose all kinds of stuff that they don't need to. And then what I find is they'll feel like I failed that day. I ruined my day, and I've now put myself back 2 steps rather than a step forward. And the mindset coaching that goes along with this can be tremendous sometimes in helping these guys understand it's one blip. This is very simple. Reset yourself, draw a new line, move forward.
Yeah, logically, it is very simple. But
chemically, it's not. Emotionally, it's not.
Yeah, and that's because this brain is talking to it. I call it our sumo brain.
Mm-hmm.
And if we try to lock up with the subconscious and beat it, it's like a sumo wrestler. He'll just squash you.
Yep.
Okay. So we need to learn to use the power of the sumo brain to our benefit. But once again, the challenge we have is much of this habit of thinking that's going on subconsciously. It's kind of like it's out in that fog out there. It doesn't have a form. It doesn't have a shape. It doesn't have an identity until we can recognize it and pull it out of the subconscious and consciously work with it until the brain is comfortable enough to take it back. And it's a simple process, but it's not easy.
No.
So we have a tool that we use that's 100% accurate in identifying how people think. Not what they think, but how they think, what's in those neural pathways, and how often is it being triggered, and how is it impacting your life? Because when they're triggered and you allow it to continue, there is a cost to it. For example, let me give you an example here. I was coaching an IT a man over the IT department for a mid-sized corporation. And one of his habits with thinking was he would overthink things. You've never had anybody like that, right?
No.
They get on the hamster wheel of thinking about it. It's
Yes.
actually an entrepreneurial gift. But if we overthink about things, it can easily create expectations that are unmet. Okay.
Yes.
So here he had a challenge. Another habit of thinking was he didn't like conflict, so he would not have hard conversations.
Mm-hmm.
He had to. He's over the IT department.
Right.
It wasn't happening. I said, well, how long is it that you spend each week get stuck on this hamster wheel, avoiding having the conversation? He said, oh, gee, I haven't thought about that, but I think it's about 3 to 4 hours a week. And I said, well, I don't know what you make, but if you extrapolate that out over a year's time, at maybe $50 an hour, I said, that's costing your company almost $10,000 because you're stuck in this habit of thinking. So we brought it out. We helped him to recognize it. Then we helped him to create a little system. And that's what you need to do to break a habit. You have to have a little system in place that the brain won't fight you on. You guys know this. And after about a month, 6 weeks, I said, how long are you spending now? He says, I don't. I recognize it. I have my system in place. 15 minutes, I have the conversation and I move on. And I said, how much drama have you released? Oh, so that's an example of that. So anyway, I want to share my screen here just to show you, those who are watching this, give you a little example. Can you see that, Jeffrey?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so we can give you a blueprint of your neural pathways, okay? It's 100% accurate. It's based on what we call neural axiological mathematics, high level, it measures values. So what we're seeing here are some color bars. The green represents who we really are. Color bars represent you got some habits of thinking that are going on that can be triggered. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
Okay, it's simply, and it tells us the risk of it, the risk of it sabotaging you, pulling you away from who you really are, pulling you away from showing up and eating the right things, doing the right exercises, all that kind of stuff. And it also shows us the frequency in which you're being triggered with these things. And when I went through bankruptcy, and a lot of people are here right now, I felt like I had a habit hangover. All the emotions that are going on and being triggered all day long, one thing after another, it was not fun. So that's what we're measuring. But I want to just share with everyone that whenever we see a color bar, none of it represents who you really are as a human being.
Gotcha.
It simply represents that you've got biology. It's all biology. We think it's us. We're flawed. We're broken. We got problems. It's only biology. You can get triggered and it creates an emotional response. And when I recognized that, Jeffrey, it seemed to take a huge load off of me.
I agree. Recognizing those triggers and that anxiety for me in different situations it probably saved my life, you know, in a roundabout way, or at least my marriage, you know, creating the additional stress that spills over into your family. Being able to recognize this stuff and then take action in correcting it. The domino effect of that, I don't think everybody can grasp sometimes in one foul swoop. It takes time.
It does. It takes time and it takes a lot of patience. Yeah.
A lot of patience. A lot of patience.
And a lot of self-awareness on it.
Yes.
So,
well, and being humble too. I guess that's a big component of all this as well. You know, breaking the habits, whether it's business habits, personal habits, health habits. It's recognizing I need help and I need to make a change.
Yeah.
And working with men, sometimes that's very difficult, you know, because there are guys out there that still subscribe to that stereotype of, you know, I don't need help. I don't need to ask for directions. I don't need any help. You know, I got this figured out, but yet they're suffering in more ways than one. And your chart, you know, points that out, is they, you know, acting like a 10, but feeling like a 2.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me, I was having a conversation with my mentor, and he's talking with a man who is extremely successful in a family business, but he had to get rid of his brothers out of the business. They were a liability, and it was just a lot of stress on him. And he did the right thing, but they got very vocal and really badmouth him in a public way. And
Sure.
so the question that was asked to him is, do you ever cry? And he said, all the time,
All the time.
but not in public. And that's the way I used to be.
Yeah.
But now I'm totally free. I'm not inhibited by life in the past, and I'm certainly not inhibited by sharing my emotions. And it's been wonderful for me. But anyway, I want to share just a couple of these measurements.
Okay.
This is a guy who's been in sales, quite successful. I just talked with him yesterday. We went through his results with him. But this little measurement right here simply tells us that his habits of thinking will pull him into trying to put on appearances to impress people. And why that's so critical and how else it shows up is down here. We go past the measurements, tells us he's not experiencing a lot of joy, a lot of fulfillment. He's got all kinds of things going on. I'll talk about a couple of those. But this is what's going on in his self-worth, his self-esteem.
Gotcha.
And so that's why he's being triggered to put on appearances, is because he's trying to fill a hole inside of him.
Yes.
Somebody's told him along the way that he wasn't enough.
Right.
Couldn't measure up. It could be abuse. I had one president of a corporation, of a company, and and he was struggling with some of these same issues. And I said, who was it that told you that you were not going to measure up? He says, you can tell that by this? And I said, yeah. And he began to tell me about his dad, who said he'd never measure up to anything because he didn't follow the educational path that his dad wanted him to.
Right.
And so that was always driving him, so that he would show up in the boardroom and be defensive. He would show up in the boardroom trying to prove his worth. And you don't fill the hole inside of you by external things.
Right.
So anyway, so this guy is struggling with conditional questioning his own worth as far as values, that type of thing. It's very self-sacrificing. He's volunteering for the next 30 things because he's trying to feel like he's okay.
Yep. And he's combative, looks like.
Defensive here.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you this one right here, and many executives. We do this with Fortune 50 companies on down, and many of the executives are not experiencing joy, peace.
Right.
And one of the reasons is because they create so quickly vision of where they're going that they create easy to create unrealistic expectation. And they're not meeting them. And so
we see that a lot in our program.
Do you?
The unrealistic expectation of what the program's supposed to yield. And then guys can get discouraged. Like I said, it took 30 years to be out of shape and unhealthy. And you can't erase all that in 3 months or 4 months or 5 months. It takes a year and 6 hours a week of good concentrated effort, whether it's nutritional effort and exercise, however you put it together, to start making those changes. And the patience has to be there once you realize you need the help.
Now, patience isn't something that most of us have.
No, we don't. I don't.
God made us.
I don't.
Yeah.
No, it's a borrowed virtue for me. I grab it when I can. I don't inherently own patience.
Well, it's interesting because if we're trying to take on too many things, the subconscious mind says, I've got to clear it off my plate. And so what it will do, one of its mechanisms, is it will download everything at once. You ever had that where you say, man, I've got to do this. And, oh, wait a minute, I got to do this over here. Oh, yeah. Well, that's simply the brain downloading. It says, listen, buddy, you've created the expectations. You're expecting to fulfill those, but you're not doing it. So I'm going to force you by dumping everything on you at one time.
Absolutely. My wife identifies it all the time. She says, I know exactly when you're overwhelmed because you do not sleep. at night. You lay in bed awake all night, and you walk around the house talking to yourself because I'm verbalizing things. You know,
Yeah.
I'm verbalizing ideas and solutions, but I do it audibly. And sometimes I don't even realize I do that. But she says, I know exactly when your brain is too full.
Oh, that seems, well, yeah, you ought to carry your wife around with you all the time.
I should. I should.
Okay, I'm just gonna share one other one.
Okay.
This is about outside world where connection with, people. This guy is exceptionally good with people. He's in sales, very good. He's got all this green in here. Just
Mm-hmm.
the challenge when we have a lot of green, and a lot of executives have a lot of green, it's called the curse of clarity. They see it so clearly, and they're probably right on how to move forward because they have a lot of experience. And the subconscious says, well, then everybody should see it that way. And it creates a lot of conflict between people and families. The same way
Yes.
with my two kids, you should be doing it this way.
Yep.
And they don't see it that way. So a lot of times it creates a lot of walls and conflict in relationships.
Yep.
And so this is the last area I want to go down to. This one is an entrepreneurial gift or a visionary gift. It says, very easy to come up with ideas, but they overthink it. It's very active. Some of your people maybe can't even go to bed at night because the brain won't shut down.
Yes.
Is that you too? It's just
sometimes, yeah. As soon as I get a new idea, and if I'm trying to figure out my side business or a big project at work, I'm absolutely entrenched to where I recognize I become distracted and I'm not paying attention to my wife, or what needs to be done around the house, things she's asking me, my kids, who are both adults with children, but they still require attention as well. And when I get wrapped up in this, all of that falls to the wayside. And I've worked very hard to make sure that I try to balance it. It's not perfect, but I'm better than where I was. But I recognize it and I'm trying to be humble about it.
Good. Because we're all deal with this at times. We just got to recognize where am I and how do I move forward with the next step. But anyway, this one right here, they obsessively think, they get on the hamster wheel of overthinking an idea, a project, a problem from yesterday, a problem from 6 weeks ago.
Yes.
The brain keeps slipping back into it, overthinking it, and it's very easy for your subconscious to create an expectation. It can't tell what's real and what isn't.
Yes.
And so it creates this expectation. And then if anybody comes and challenges their idea, their belief, this is what the brain does. You ever run into anyone, Jeffrey, who needs to be right?
Oh my gosh. Hold on. Let me get my list. And sometimes it's me. I'm part of that list of people when, and sometimes, I know I'm right in certain situations and I don't always know how to back off of that so that the conversation can stay constructive and healthy. And as I get older, I am better at that. If you'd asked me 20 years ago, I'd be getting an F- in that aspect of things. But it all comes back to being humble and recognizing that, we all need help and we all struggle with stuff.
Well, we do. With this little tip, though, this has opened a lot of executive eyes, opened mine because I was the king of needing to be right.
Yeah.
And what the brain does with your idea, Jeffrey, if you're having any dialogue about your self-worth, your brain will take your idea and it takes it and it connects it to your self-worth.
Gotcha.
So in this person's particular situation, he's very clear. His ideas are right. He's probably spot on with how he should do something. But because his brain has attached that idea to his self-worth, and the brain's got to preserve you, keep you safe and predictable, it will fight to the end sometimes to save you. So it's not about whether you should go out for pizza tonight. It's your brain saying, I've got to be right about going out.
Right.
So what it feels like when somebody challenges you that they're questioning your very value system. That's what it is for this guy.
Yeah.
Or it feels like they're questioning his skill sets.
Yes. 100%.
Or this one, he's got a lot of these going on. It can feel like they're questioning his very worth as a human being.
Yep.
That's what it feels like. And so that's just some of the habits of thinking and the connection. But the power of this is you can quickly cut to the chase of what's driving all the outcomes in your life, so that without awareness, you can't address anything. You just deal with it. You just live with it. And so that's what I do with corporations.
That's fantastic.
Profile. I can coach.
I mean, that is such a unique way of unlocking the ability to problem solve and critical think for yourself. Be in that self-awareness that many of our clients come into the program thinking they know, what they need to do, and quickly realize that this system is simple and they didn't actually. I have so many guys tell me, just on a real basic level, I had no idea how much sodium affected, how my ability to metabolize macronutrients and lose weight and maintain a healthy lifestyle. I never thought about it, with that tiny micronutrient out there. Yes, we need sodium, but we don't need, this much sodium. We need this much sodium. And teaching them that and opening their eyes to those little facets of how nutrition works along with motivation, mental health, and activity. And I love this tool you presented because I think it works hand in hand with those same concepts we work with health-wise with these guys. It's not just specifically business related or personal related. These are concepts that are transferable into any aspects of our life. And I think that's fantastic.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun working with people. If any of your clients or people involved with this, watching this, if they'd like to take this profile, I do that with them, and then I'll actually get on with them for 30 minutes and tie in where they are in their life into, and connect the dots between their habits of thinking and what they're experiencing with their outcomes and what are the walls. And just so you know, I have wonderful relationships with those two kids now.
That's awesome.
Because I learned how to actually listen instead of tell.
Yes.
And I actually got rid of the habits of thinking that were creating the walls between me and them, and my business is thriving. So
yeah, I can't tell you how many times my wife and both my girls have said over the years, I don't need you to fix this. I just need you to listen. I just need someone to listen. I don't need a solution. And for many years, to me, that was a foreign concept. It's like, why would somebody come to me with a problem and not want, the solution to this? And that was just that, that being a 10, but, kind of still feeling like a 2 in here. I'm the dad. I've got to solve this for them, and it took me a long time to learn that, zip it. They don't want my opinion. They just want dad to listen. They want the husband to listen. And I think this tool can unlock a lot of that for that. I'd be totally interested in running through that tool and discover more about myself, maybe frighten me to death, but at the same time, unlock some things that maybe I'm still, ignoring the fact that I've got hangups on stuff. So this has been fascinating, Doug, really fascinating. And I'm really glad that you chose to spend some time with us tonight, because it is, these are concepts that Tyson is very, very big on mindset, as well as just the health and nutrition aspects of what we do, because him and I both believe strongly that it's all tied together. You can't have, one thing in balance and two things out of balance. That wobbly wheel won't work forever. It will eventually come apart. And we have to balance those things in our life, and mindset and how we view ourselves, particularly men, that self-worth aspect of things, recognizing it and being humble about it. And I think this is a perfect avenue for a lot of these guys to level set that again in their lives as the middle-aged individuals that we are, and give ourselves that much more, as you were pointing out, joy in what we're doing moving forward. We're highly productive individuals, and a lot of us have very, a disproportionate amount of joy. I won't say they don't have joy. I have a lot of joy. I also have a lot of anxiety. And so it's disproportionate sometimes. And I would always like to, weigh more on the joy side and the less anxiety, and not worry so much about things that, quite frankly, simply aren't important in the big scheme of things. When it comes down to it, relationships with your kids, your grandkids, your spouse, your family, your partners, that's so much more important than worrying about, how do we fix this widget, tomorrow, and losing sleep over it.
Yeah.
So this has been fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Doug. I look forward to talking to you more in the future here. So, all right, guys, Six Pack Dad Tribe. That's another wrap on our evening podcast. This has been Doug Stoddard, habit breaker expert. If you have further questions, you want to engage with Doug, you can reach out to myself or Tyson, and we can put you in touch with Doug, and Doug can take it from there. So any parting words, Doug? Anything you can let these guys sleep on?
Just thank you. Everybody in your journey, you're winning.
Every day.
Every day. And what I've learned to do is celebrate myself at least 15 times a day.
Right.
And I'll pick up a piece of paper and say, way to go, Dougie.
Yes.
I'm proud of you. And
That's right.
I don't think we celebrate enough the little wins.
We absolutely don't. And Tyson and I talk about that a lot as well. Those small goals, those small victories. When you have to lose 100 pounds, the 100-pound goal isn't even in your vision yet. It's the 10-pound goal, that first 10 pounds. That's what we're working towards. That's the victory. And keeping it, real and reasonable, and the expectations within your sights all the time, instead of worrying about, I still got 90 pounds to lose. And I think, again, this is a tool that can help unlock that for a lot of these guys. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.